Hello everyone, this is Sudhir Kumar Dwivedi, Assistant Professor of Law from Gemtech School of Law, Greater Noida. The topic for today's lecture is Burden of Proof under the subject Law of Evidence. So, first of all, it is important to know what is the burden of proof. The word burden of proof has not been defined in Evidence Act. It is a fundamental principle of criminal jurisprudence that the guilt of accused is to be proved by the prosecution and an accused should be presumed innocent. So, in criminal law cases, it is accepted principle of criminal jurisprudence that the burden of proof is always on the prosecution side. It never changes. The conclusion is derived from fundamental principle that the accused should be presumed to be innocent till he is proved guilty beyond reasonable doubt, and the accused has got right to take benefit of some reasonable doubt. So if we see the general meaning of the burden of proof, then it is the strict meaning of the term burden of proof, that is onus probandi, is that if no evidence is given by the party on whom the burden is passed, the issue must be found against him. The expression burden of proof really means two different things. It means something that the party is required to prove an allegation before the judgment is given in its favor, and secondly, it is also means that on a contested issue, one of the two contending parties has to introduce evidence. The expression burden of proof is explained in section 101 of the Indian Evidence Act. When a person is bound to prove the existence of any fact, it is said that the burden of proof lies on that person. The question is, which out of two parties has to prove a fact? The answer to this question decides the question as to the burden of proof. So we know that section 101 of the Indian Evidence Act illustrates the burden of proof in the sense of proving a case. It lays down that whoever wants to a court to give a judgment in his favor as to any legal right or liability dependent on the existence of some facts must prove the existence of those facts. The burden of proving a case remains throughout the entire case on the party on whom the pleading originally places it. It never shifts. So, in short, the burden of proof means the obligation to prove a fact. Every party has to establish a fact which go in his favor or against his opponent, and this is the burden of proof. Evidence Act lays down some principle of burden of proof in general nature. We will discuss in further part of the lecture. So the principle of burden of proof, theoretically the basis is divided in two parts: the concept of onus probandi and the factum probans. So as we have discussed that the burden of proof is of two kinds, that one is the burden of proof on pleading and the second one is the burden of adducing the evidence. And the burden that arises from pleading depends upon the facts asserted or denied and is determined by the rules of substantive and statutory law or by presumption of law and fact. And the burden of adducing the evidence rests on the party who would lose if no evidence is led by any of the parties. Uh, it can be said that the first kind of burden of proof arising from pleading and determined by the substantive law, it never shifts, it always remains constant, and the burden adducing the evidence is described as shifting. Section 102 of the shows that the initial burden of proving a prima facie case is in his favor is cast on the plaintiff. So this is the basic concept of the onus probendi and the factum probens. Onus probendi we discussed that the generally known as the burden of proof, and then the second is the, and we have discussed that it is of two kind. One is that reducing from pleading, and another is from the reducing the evidence. And reducing from the pleading is based on the substantive law and it never shifts, and the second one shifts. And in regard to the second one, that it is the reducing the evidence, it is generally the factum probens by which the fact is to be proved. So thus together, how to prove facts and who shall prove, or who shall prove and to what extent, burden of proof is constant, onus shifts. We discuss these things. It consists and means that what is to be proved is fixed, that is burden is constant, and who shall prove, that is to be decided. The liabilities and the responsibilities to prove the fact is known as onus, that is burden, which shifts from shoulder of one party to the shoulder of another party. And burden of proof is always constant because it has reference to the ingredients and concept, while onus shifted from shoulder to shoulder. Now let's see what section 101 provides of the Indian Evidence Act. Section 101 of the Indian Evidence Act explains the burden of proof as under: whoever desires any court to give a judgment as to any legal right or liability dependent on the existence of two facts which he asserts must prove that facts exist. When a person is bound to prove the existence of any fact, it is said that the burden of proof lies on that person. Suppose A desires a court to give a judgment that B shall be punished for a crime which A says B has committed to. So the A must prove that B has committed the crime. So whatever the we have discussed, that whatever the right burden arises from the pleadings. Here the question arises from the pleading is that Mr. B has committed the crime. So it is the arising from the pleadings. So it will always be established by the plaintiff. It will never shift. So in this case, the burden of proof is constant. It is the A who has to establish that B has committed the crime. It will never shift. But to prove this, if suppose Mr. A leads some evidence regarding this crime, and Mr. B if does not lead any evidence, then obviously the case will be proved against B. So after reducing the evidence, the onus probendi, that is leading the evidence, generally shifts from one shoulder to another shoulder. That is has been dealt in section 102 of the Indian Evidence Act. Supreme Court in Jarnail Sen versus State of Punjab, AIR 1996, Supreme Court 755. In this case, in criminal, it was held that in criminal cases, the burden of proving of the guilt of the accused beyond all reasonable doubt always lies upon the prosecution, and therefore, if it is fails to adduce the satisfactory evidence to discharge the burden, it cannot fall back upon the evidence adduced by the accused person in support of their defense to rest it solely thereupon. Now let's see the section 102, on whom the burden of proof lies. The burden of proof in a suit or proceeding lies on that person who would fail if no evidence at all were given on either side. Let's try to understand by an illustration. A sues B for land of which B is in possession, and which A asserts was left to A by the will of C B's father. If no evidence were given on either side, B would be entitled to retain the possession. Therefore, the burden of proof is on A. Because if you are claiming, suppose here A is claiming a land, just claiming the land is not sufficient unless and until an evidence is lead to support his point. And here, since B is already in possession, and B is the son of Mr. C, so he is having a legal right over the property. And if A is Mr. A is saying that he has got the property by will of Mr. C, then he must have to lead the evidence to prove the will before the court. Now let's see the section 103 of the Indian Evidence Act. The burden of proof as to particular fact. The burden of proof as to any particular fact lies on that person who wishes the court to believe in its existence, unless it is provided by any law that the proof of that fact shall lie on any other particular person. The illustration which has been given is that A prosecutes B for theft and wishes the court to believe that B admitted the theft to C. A must prove the admission of B. B wishes the court to believe that at that time in question he was elsewhere. He must prove it. So the burden of proof to any particular fact lies on the person who wishes to court to believe in his existence. Again, and if you know evidence is will be led by the person, then the court will not believe on that fact. Suppose in this illustration, if one party wants to prove the plea of alibi, then he has to prove that he was somewhere else, otherwise it will be not be believed by the court. And the same way section 104 provides that burden of proving fact to be proved to make evidence admissible. The burden of proving any fact necessary to be proved in order to enable any person to give evidence of any other fact is on the person who wishes to give evidence. Illustration is that A wishes to prove a dying declaration by B. A must prove B's death. B wishes to prove by secondary evidence the contents of a lost document. A must prove the document has been lost. So if something is dependent on a particular fact, then that fact must be established before by proving that fact. The evidence must be laid out. So the burden of proving any fact which is to be proved in order to enable a person give evidence to any other fact is a person who wishes to give. So here if one want to prove the dying declaration, he must prove first, he must have to prove the death of that person. And if someone wants to give the secondary evidence, then he must have to give the evidence that the primary evidence has been lost. In the same way, section 105 of the Indian Evidence Act provides that burden of proving that cases of accused comes within exceptions. When a person is accused of any offence, the burden of proving the existence of the circumstances bringing the case within any of the general exception of the Indian Evidence Act, which has been given from section 76 to 106, or within any special exception or proviso contained in any other part of the same code or in any law defining the offence is upon him, and the court shall presume the absence of such circumstances. So if the one party wants to take the defense of any general exception which has been given in the Indian Penal Code from section 76 to 106, then that party has to prove that, otherwise court will not believe on the existence of those exceptional circumstances. Suppose A accused of murder alleges that by reason of unsoundness of mind he did not know the nature of the act. The burden of proof is on A. The burden of proving the unsoundness of mind is on A, that he could not understand the nature of the crime. Otherwise court will not believe on such exception. The court will believe that the murder was committed by A. If it is falling in any exception, the burden of proof lies on that person who is claiming the exception. Section 106 provides that burden of proving fact especially within the knowledge. When any fact is especially within the knowledge of any person, the burden of proving that fact is upon him. When a person does an act with some intention other than that which are the character and circumstances of the act suggest, the burden of proving the intention is upon him. So if one act has been done with a specific knowledge or intention, knowledge, then that has to be proved by that person. Otherwise, whatever the general thinking characteristic or circumstance, that will be presumed by the court. If it is some with special knowledge and intention, then that has to be established before the court. Burden upon affirmation. A general trend that Indian Evidence Act follows is that of shifting the burden of proof onto a person who affirms a fact or assertion. The same is visible in various provisions of the Act. The rationale behind the same is that if the person asserts something, he may also prove the same. Such instances can be found in section 107 to 110. Section 107 provides that burden of proving death of a person known to have been alive within 30 years. When the question is whether a man is alive or dead and it is shown that he was alive within the 30 years, the burden of proving that he is dead on the person who affirms it. So if any person is claiming that a person is dead, and if it has been established before the court that he was alive within 30 years, then the court will presume that he is alive, unless and until if some party wants to believe that he is dead, then he has to lead the evidence. Otherwise, if he was the person was alive within 30 years, then court will presume that he is alive. In the same way, section 108 provides that burden of proving that person is alive who has not been heard for 7 years, provided that when the question is whether a man is alive or dead and it is proved that he has not been heard for 7 years by those who would naturally have heard to him if he had been alive, the burden of proving that he is alive is shifted to the person who affirms it. So the burden of proving that person is alive who has not been heard from 7 years. If some person has not been heard from 7 years and someone is claiming that he is alive, then the burden of proving that he is alive is on the person who is affirming or who is asserting, who is saying before the court that the person is alive. Now, section 109, burden of proof as to the relationship in the cases of partners, landlord and tenant, principal and agent. When the question is whether a person or partners, landlords and tenant, or principal and agent, and it has been shown that they have been acting as such, the burden of proving that they do not stand or have ceased to stand to each other in those relationships respectively is on the person who affirms it. So if there is a question regarding the relationship whether the person are partners or whether persons are landlord or tenant or whether the persons are principal or agent, and if it has been shown that they were acting like as a partners or like as a landlord and tenant or like a principal and agent, their behavior was that, then the person who is denying that existence of fact, he has to prove the contrary. Otherwise court will believe that such relation exists. Now section 110 that talks about the burden of proof as to ownership. When the question is whether any person is owner of anything of which he is shown to be in possession, the burden of proving that he is not the owner is on the person who affirms that he is not the owner. So if one person, it is also you must have studied the thing that the possession is considered a 9 point in the eye of law. So if one person is in possession, it is generally presumed that he is the owner, and if someone is wants to prove the contrary, then he must have to lead the evidence regarding that. In the same way, section 111 and provides that proof of good faith in transaction where one party is in relation of active confidence, where there is a question as to the good faith of the transaction between the parties, one of whom stands to other in position to active confidence. The burden of proving the good faith of the transaction is on the party who is in position of active confidence. Let's try to understand by an example. The good faith of a sale by a client to an attorney is in question in a suit brought by a client. The burden of proving the good faith of the transaction is on the attorney. That's all about the burden of proof. That is the first part of the burden of proof. We will see the second part of the burden of proof in the next lecture. Thank you.